yeah, let's start with Liz.
Okay. I think the big question is not what do you want to do, but who do you want to serve? And if you don't know who you want to serve in expanding a podcast or starting a podcast, you're going to serve no one. And I think the more specific you get, and knowing their pains, knowing their challenges, knowing their struggles, I always say start with people like yourself. And that's the easiest place, right? It's not like I'm trying to serve a group of people that I don't know. I'm a woman in real estate investing, looking to create a financially free and balanced life, right? More on the balance side, I can struggle with. Andresa's the same. That's the conversations we had. So know who you want to serve, know how you want to serve them, and put yourself, you're in service as a podcast host. You are serving people and helping them. And if you can't do that, then look at another way to do it.
Well, if you want to start a podcast, I encourage you to quit. Quit your excuses. Think about this, right? I am an immigrant. English is not my first language. I probably make a ton of grammar mistakes talking today. So if I were to keep thinking or using that as an excuse to start a podcast, I would not. If I keep looking and listening back to all the mistakes that I made, and I will continue making until somebody tells me that's wrong, I will not have done it. I would not have served people. So quit, oh, I don't know the equipment, well, Kevin has a list. Oh, I don't know how the questions, well, we give Kevin a list of items to do it. Download that document. But your mentality will set you free. Same thing as real estate investing. Podcast is no different. Either you choose to have an excuse or you quit that and get started.
I would recommend that you start that funnel that I talked about earlier, right? So if you simply go out to whatever type of social media you have, whatever email lists you have, whatever influence you have in your community, wherever there are people that you naturally connect with, put out there, I'm thinking about starting a podcast doing X. It's going to have these type of audience members and these are the types of topics. Who do you know that might be a great guest on my show? And then start getting that input in there, and you're automatically going to get people saying, well, that's an awesome idea. I know this person and I'm going to forward it to this person. You're also going to get feedback that says, well, have you thought about custom tailoring it a little bit differently this way that might meet somebody's needs better? So I would recommend getting that net out there to start that funnel so you can start building the right guests for your show.
Oh, I have a lot.
Quickly.
Yeah.
In one sentence.
Focus on doing what you love. Doing a podcast is difficult, and I say that coming from the position of I had Kevin, who would help me or help us produce the podcast, design the podcast, find guests, edit the podcast, market the podcast, do surveys to get feedback, find guests. Basically, all Carol and I had to do, not all we had to do, but the bulk of our job was going out and interviewing people. So we had it about as easy as anybody in this business has it. And let me tell you something, there were still days that I dreaded doing it because I picked the wrong guest, or we had the wrong guest, or we didn't know what we were going to talk about, or it wasn't a topic that we were excited about. If we, being people who basically had everything handed to us, had times that we wanted to quit because we just had to go talk to people, imagine having to do all of this other stuff and how many times you're going to say, ugh, I can't do this is too hard. So to avoid doing that, figure out what you really love about podcasting and focus on it. If you really love being able to talk to people, then talk to as many people as you can, and if that means the editing's not as good, so be it. If that means marketing after you put the episodes together isn't as good, so be it. If that means that you don't have as good equipment because you don't feel like figuring out how to set up your microphone or your video, fine, so be it. Focus on the stuff that you do love because that'll allow you to keep doing it. You're not going to get a lot of views in week 1 or week 2 or week 50 or week 200, but you're going to ramp up, and eventually you're going to start getting some traction. You're going to start getting views. You're going to start getting feedback that this podcast is changing my life. But you only get to episodes 50, 100, and 200 if you're really doing what you love. And if you focus on the stuff that you don't love, you're going to quit. So don't worry about the editing if you're not good at it and you can't do it, if you can't afford somebody to do it for you. Don't focus on the marketing, don't focus on whatever, focus on what you love, whatever will get you to episode 100, 200, 300, because that's when you're going to start getting the traction. And once you get the traction, well, then it's fun and everybody's going to love it, but you have to get there.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, he said it. Good. Just kidding. All right. A couple thoughts. Number one, don't be boring is probably the best tip I have for people. By the way, I'm going to go back and answer your question about being a good guest. And this applies to, I respect Kevin. So this applies to both that question and just the final tip for being a podcaster or a guest. Number one, do not be boring. There are so many boring podcasts out there. They're boring as hell. And I've been on them, and I'm sure I've been that boring guest. You got to find a way to stay out.
Not boring.
All right. So it doesn't necessarily mean energetic like me. I'm fairly high energy, and I like that, like jumping around and talking. But there's I think of Jay back there, Jay Babson, right? Like you and Gary, think like CEO. It's one of my favorite podcasts of all time. You guys are not jumping around excited, like yelling like I try to do, or me and David laugh. But there's an intensity and an intention and an energy and a confidence that's there that makes it not boring at all. And sometimes that comes just being in the industry for 20, 30 years, like knowing what you're talking about, but it's phenomenal. I recommend checking it out. So don't be boring, be confident, have energy. Again, it doesn't mean you're jumping around, but that does help. When we're looking for a good guest, I would say even above your real estate experience, energy is number one for me. I know, Kevin, you pick most of our guests, or you and Eric too, but if you've got great energy, you have a 10 times greater shot of getting on our show than if you have bad energy. And again, energy doesn't mean loudness, so just whatever that means for you is to be there. So that's best I got is be bold, be full of energy, be confident.
Great. Last thought from me is creativity. Doing anything creative can feel very mysterious. Like, oh, that guy he just has it, and he just jumps on the mic and figures it out. But it's a lot more systematic if you really start to study the media that you're listening to or watching, and you start to pick apart, like, why does Brandon do the intro that way? Why does he kind of tease the topics that are coming up but doesn't really close the loop? Like, what's going on there? Why is he doing that? Most people have a reason why they're doing these things, and they all serve a purpose. And so that requires a little bit of a mindset shift, kind of like when you discovered real estate and you started noticing all the beat up houses in your neighborhood. Once you start realizing that most of these shows are just created of segments that all serve a purpose to move you through the episode or get you more interested or engaged, then you can start to emulate those things yourself and just basically copy those and put them in your own style. So that's kind of my closing thoughts. You guys